Okay, hello and welcome everybody to a new video. So I did end up playing in that tournament over the weekend, and I promise I will make a video at some point looking at my games there. I would say I played reasonably well. I didn't have a very good result. I got 2.5 out of 6. But it'll actually be pretty instructive to see the mistakes that I made in those games. So I will make a video kind of later on in the week when I have time, because that'll be a little more of an in-depth looking into the 6 games that I played. But until then, I played a really crazy game this week from the league. So I played another one of the young talents here at the chess center, and I was black. So yeah, let's just dive right into this game. This was definitely I think one of the craziest games I've played in quite a while. So okay, so my opponent played e4, I played e5, and already from move 3, we actually started going into some uncommon opening waters. So the most common ways for it to continue playing this are Ruy Lopez, bishop b5, or bishop c4, the Italian. And probably third would be d4, the Scotch. However, my opponent played a much rarer move, c3. And this actually, it does have a name. This is called the Ponziani opening. And the idea is white wants to play d4 and then be able to recapture with a pawn and get a nice center pawn duo controlling the center. Now it's a nice idea, but it does come with a pretty serious drawback, and that is this knight. This knight on b1 can no longer go to its desired square on c3. Now there's a funny story I have about this opening. When I was so my opponent now is I think 13 or 14 years old. When I was about his age, there was a master, the chess center where I was playing, who always played this opening with white. He always played c3, and he was rated about 2400. And he was beating everybody with this move c3. He was also the highest rated player by a lot. And I always found this opening really annoying because I felt like this just violates the opening principles. I mean, white is not developing a piece. White's putting a pawn on a square that makes it harder to develop a piece. And I always got very annoyed by this kind of strategy. I thought, okay, we have to punish this somehow. So I went, home and analyzed this opening, and I figured out I found an incredible sacrificial way that black can play against this opening that leads to positions that I've never seen in any other opening, like any other chess opening that I've studied. So okay, I mean, now the first few moves that black plays are very logical. Let's start with knight f6. So this immediately tries to exploit the drawbacks of c3. White can no longer play knight c3. It's a natural move to defend this pawn. And of course white could play d3, but that's not really what he wants to do. He played c3 to play d4, so the main move is d4, and my opponent played d4. So now, okay, black says, all right, you didn't defend the pawn, I'm going to take. And white's idea is not to just take on e5. If you take on e5, then actually this will open up the diagonal for my bishop, and you win your pawn back, but now you have a big problem to defend f2. So actually, white's idea here is to play d5, which attacks the knight on c6, and if the knight moves away, then white is going to recapture this pawn and say, well, you know what, I've gained a little bit of space in the center, your development is a little bit blocked up, and I'm just going to get my bishop out and castle and be pretty comfortable. And I think this is the main line. So like the main moves here for black are, I think, knight b8 and knight e7. Now, okay, the gambit way that I discovered that black can play here is this move, bishop to c5. And this is called, I believe, the Fraser attack, or Fraser defense. In my opinion, it's more of an attack than a defense. But either way, it's essentially a piece sacrifice. So, we're saying, okay, go ahead, take our knight. You don't have a good way of defending this f2 pawn. And if I take on f2 with the bishop, your king is going to have to move into the center, and that means you won't be able to castle. So it's essentially a long-term piece sacrifice. And white doesn't have anything better than taking knight. I mean, if you play bishop e3, this is just a horrible position, because I can take. Now you have to take with a pawn. This opens up this diagonal, and because of this, I can actually just move my knight back. And remember, black is up a pawn. I took a pawn on e4 earlier, and now you cannot take this pawn back, because now queen h4 check is going to be a big problem. And g3, and I take g3, I can take it with this pin here. I mean, knight f3, I can come back, queen h6, targeting this. So this is just not playable for white. The only way for it to continue, white has to accept this piece sacrifice. Has to take on c6. So okay, continues, bishop takes f2, king e2. And I remember when I was looking at this line, this was the better part of a decade ago, all of the opening books that I mean, there's not a lot of opening books that talk about the Ponziani, but all the books that I could find, they only talked about this move, pawn takes c6, which I think for a while was the main move for black. And it looks pretty reasonable. Like, black has actually gotten 3 pawns for the piece, but the problem is white has this move queen a4, which attacks the knight, which is the defender of this bishop. And, okay, I mean, I have to defend the knight. I cannot play d5 because that would lose the c6 pawn. And after f5, white's simply going to play knight d2, and once again, if we move this knight, we lose the bishop. And, I mean, this has been played. There's a little bit of theory here. The best move for black is to castle, and then white can take here, and white could take on e4, or white could take on f2. And white is going to keep his extra piece, and essentially black's counterplay is fairly limited. So he does have a lot of pawns in the center, but, you know, this king is going to be pretty safe. So the move that I discovered, and the way I discovered it was actually pretty funny. The move here is bishop b6, which is known. So, like, my opponent knew this move. Now, I don't know how well known this was 10 years ago, but because this has been featured actually in some over-the-board games between strong players. And the way I found out about this was actually on a blog post on chess.com, where there was somebody who claimed to have the refutation to the Ponziani, and this was the line he gave. And he had all of these really complicated variations that he analyzed, and his main line from here went queen d5. So this is the main move for white. In this position, black is already threatening to just calmly take back on c6 and just slow play this castle, and we have 3 pawns for the piece. This king is stuck on e2, and that's just going to be a good position for black. So white has to play queen d5 and try to really put more pressure. So the queen attacks a lot of stuff and also threatens to take on b7, which is going to win even more material, forking the rook and bishop. So it actually looks like a desperate situation for black already. I mean, there's so many threats, what on earth do we do? And okay, the line continues, black plays knight f2. And my opponent here took on e5, which I knew was a mistake. I didn't remember all the details, but I knew that wasn't the best move. I remember the best move is rook g1, and now black plays this incredible castles, just completely ignoring c takes b7. And white can win a second piece by taking on d7. This is the main line. And then black plays queen f6. And yeah, the author of this blog post claiming to have refuted the Ponziani, this was his main line, and he essentially, he analyzed this to ridiculous amounts of detail. Like, literally pages and pages, and games that he had played against Stockfish, games that he had played with engines playing against other engines from this position. But it was insane the amount of work this person went to. I don't know who this person was, just some online blog poster. And he basically said, like, this position is winning for black. And I looked at it myself with engines. I mean, this position is, I think, beyond the ability for even a machine to figure out, because this is just I've never seen such an imbalance after just 11 moves in any kind of opening. I mean, black has sacrificed 2 minor pieces. We only have 2 pawns for those, but we're going to have full control of the center. And this king on e2 is, like, literally on the worst possible square. It obstructs this bishop. This bishop can't move, so that means this rook is stuck. And also because of this unfortunate move c3, white is going to lag a little bit in getting his queenside pieces out. So if he develops the knight here, now the bishop is blocked. And I think the best move for white is like knight a3 or something. I don't actually remember a whole lot of details. I remember knight a3, and I think the best move is e4, and it goes something like this. Like knight e4, and then, if I remember correctly, knight g4. Threatening queen f2 check, and then, you know, there's a whole lot of mess, basically, that can happen here. So I thought that would be a fun position to play, where kind of both of us would be on our own. Or at least I know a little bit about it, but my opponent took on e5, which I don't know if he actually was still familiar with this, but I knew queen takes e5 was a mistake. And it looks like white really achieved something, because obviously black cannot trade queens. If we play queen e7, white is just going to take and enjoy being up a piece in the endgame. He's going to save his rook, and then black is not going to be able to create any threats without queens on the board. So I have to play king f8. And it looks like black's king has been misplaced, and this has been something good for white. But actually it turns out that opening up the e file is a big problem. So when white took this pawn on e5, now the e file is going to be opened up later. And it's not going to be long before black is able to chase this queen off of e5 and then get the queen to e7, take on c6, develop the bishop, develop the rook. And that's basically how black is going to try and play this position, even if it takes a few moves, because white is so clumsy in getting his pieces out. It's actually very difficult to defend this. So okay, anyway, we continue playing here. Rook g1 is the best move. You have to save the rook. And yeah, already here, like I was on my own. I remember that there were some lines I looked at, it might have been in a different variation, where black ends up having double pawns on the c file, and he plays c5, c4, and then the other pawn to c5 again. So I figured that must mean that this is the right move. And it also threatens checkmate n1. So in queen d1 checkmate, very unusual checkmate already, but so that was a very attractive move. It turns out this is actually not most accurate. I mean, I will not go into all the details of this position, but there's a pretty incredible. Actually, black is winning in this position by force. There's a really incredible idea that we can find with the engine, and I'm just going to show it to you because this is like, I don't think I would find this over the board. Moves f6. And the idea behind this is actually simple enough. We try to just force this queen off of the e file. And the reason why that you wouldn't really consider a move like f6 is because the queen, it looks like she has so many options to go to. I mean, she has at least like 6 squares that are safe to go to. It's much easier to calculate like knight g4 or take on c6, which create more direct threats that don't have as many ways of stopping them. But actually, after f6, it turns out that there's like a concrete reason why almost all of these squares are bad for the queen. The only square that's actually good is g4 or f4. Like for example, queen g3, this is the simplest one to refute. Black just plays queen e7. And the only safe square for the king is d2. That walks right into a fork. And you just lose the queen. So okay, basically, there's other variations too, but white has to play queen f4. And now black plays another incredible move, g5. So this is an absolutely insane idea. Just completely throwing all caution to the wind with our own king, but this queen has no safe squares to go to. So like again, if she goes to g3, then you walk into the same problem. And there's reasons why other squares are also bad. The best move is knight takes g5 to take advantage of this pin, but now black just plays d takes c6. Just very common, d takes c6. And the main point is, like now once again, we're threatening queen d1 checkmate, and you don't have this move that white later had in the game. You can't play knight d4 now, because you've already played knight g5. So the only move is actually bishop e3. And then there's some crazy computer line, knight at d3, queen at 3 is the only move, knight e5 attacking the queen, and this is just losing. If you play queen f4, then you're going to lose the queen. I'll take here and play knight g4 check. Other moves are not really any better. This is pretty much an irresistible attack for black. So anyway, I didn't see any of that. So I'm only human, and I just played d takes c6, which is still actually a fine move. Like, black is still better. And the best move is bishop e3. Like, I looked at this during the game, and this could happen, knight g4, and then we have a fork, so white has to do bishop c5 check. King g8, and then the only move, queen d4, because you have to stay defending the bishop. And then I don't trade queens, I play queen e8 check, forcing the king to the d file, and then I thought I'd play bishop f5, and I thought this position was like very dangerous for white. It turns out that this is still like playable, but white will have to sacrifice the queen. So like for example, we can block the d file like this, and after rook d8, it's best to just take as much material as you can for the queen. And we get some crazy imbalanced position. If you actually count material points, I think it's even. It's like queen and 2 pawns for rook and 2 minor pieces. But yeah, that would be a completely unclear position. Okay, anyway, he played knight d4, which actually is a pretty serious mistake, because it allows a totally crazy idea, which there's another crazy idea in this position. Besides this whole f6 g5 thing, there's another crazy idea that black has. So anyway, first things first, we have to save the knight, so knight g4, that's the best move, I played it. I mean, you have to save the knight with tempo, so that wasn't hard to find. And now after queen f4, here there's apparently only one move that's winning for black. This one I think is findable. The main problem with playing this position is that there's so many tempting moves you could play. Like you could play queen e7 check, you could play c5, maybe queen e8 check. Maybe we just develop the bishop to try and get the queen to work out. But okay, if you want to try and find this idea for black, I'll give you a chance. You can pause the video. And the move is this double X clam H5. So this is a really, incredible idea. We should play rook H6, and once this rook enters the attack from either F6 or after taking the knight from E6, this is going to be completely over. White, even if white plays H3, we can just sacrifice the knight, play rook H6, and this is going to be lights out. Rook F6, and I'm going to take on G4 next, then I'm going to bring my queen, the other rook comes in, and with my queen, 2 rooks, and 2 bishops, this king is going to get totally destroyed in the middle of the board. So yeah, H5 would have been a really cool move, but I didn't think about that. I played C5, which is less good. It's still, still good chances for black. But okay, the game stays more interesting. So knight F3, then I play C4 again. So this is what I remembered. I think it was in some other variation where black plays this C4, and then for knight D4, again plays C5. And white goes back knight F3. And here, by the way, I think this H5 move is still quite strong with this rook left idea. But instead, I played G6. So I thought for a long time here, because there's a lot of moves to play for black. Like, in fact, if I didn't have this bishop on C8, I would be winning right away. I would play queen D3 check. And after king E1, I could play rook E8, and that basically beats the checkmate. But yeah, because this bishop is in the way, I can't do that. And there's actually no way to sacrifice this bishop. When I play bishop F5, you take, and then you control the D3 square. So I thought for a long time here, and I found what I thought was a decent move. I played G6, and this actually still keeps some advantage for black, but it gives white some extra chances. And my idea is actually really simple. I just want to play bishop F5, and then it's going to be this unstoppable queen D3 and rook E8. That's my plan. The problem is white plays H3, and I kind of hallucinated here. I thought that I'm completely winning after queen E7 check, but I realized that after bishop E3, which he played, I realized that my intended bishop C7, so this is what I had seen from far away. I thought bishop C7, and I thought the queen has no squares to move to. That still defends this bishop. But actually, there's one square, which I overlooked. That's queen G5. So this was like a huge cold shower. When I got to this position, I actually already realized that my mistake, that my bishop C7 doesn't actually do anything, because I can play queen G5. And here I thought for another very long time, I was trying to find anything else I could do. Because if I have to just retreat my knight, then, or take an E3, that's not going to be ideal. I'm going to start dissipating my initiative. So there's nothing better. I did think of this crazy move G5, which actually almost works. If he takes with a queen, then I have F6. You have to stay guarding the bishops. Queen F4 is the only move. And now I play bishop C7. And because of this pawn in F6, you cannot play queen G5. So this would be a pretty funny way that would be winning for black, but it doesn't work, because you can just take the knight. And then after bishop C7, white can even take on F7, just sacrificing some material to get into an endgame, or you can play queen E4. This doesn't work for black. So yeah, after thinking for a while, I realized I have nothing better to do here. So I play bishop C7, queen G5. I can't trade queens, so I have to play F6. But now queen takes C5, still defending the bishop. Once again, I cannot trade queens, so bishop D6. And a queen D4, still defending the bishop. And now here, yeah, my knight is hanging. I thought about playing knight H6 here, which actually would be a pretty decent way to keep things interesting, if I can get knight F5. But white can just play G4 and totally shut this down. And now I really have no counterplay. This knight is out of the picture, and white is just going to run his king out of the way, and this is just hopeless for black. I'm still down a piece. So I took on E3, and then I played queen C7. So this is the position that I saw back a few moves ago, before I played bishop C7. So I saw I have nothing better than this. And white is probably winning here. Definitely white is better. The worst should be over for him, because now he has a pretty clear plan to consolidate, get his knight out, his rook out, and his king is going to kind of hide over here. But it's still not so easy, because I have two very powerful bishops. You still have, you have to be a little bit careful and accurate in how you develop the rest of your pieces. You still have this issue over here on the king side. Those pieces can't move up. But okay, with best play, this should probably already be good, maybe winning for white if he can consolidate. So okay, so this next few moves are fine for him. He plays knight BD2. And I didn't want to just kind of play passive moves like bishop D7 and B5 and just kind of try and solidify my pawn in c4, so I tried to play as actively as possible, bishop f5. And now, this is very important, he doesn't have time to try and improve his rook, because I'm threatening rook e8, which was the queen. So actually king d1 is the only good move here. And now, yeah, I mean, the way I played maybe is not objectively the most precise for black, but it's tricky. I played rook d8. And my idea is, like, one thing white really wants to do is establish a blockade on d4. He can put a knight on d4, and it can never be chased away by a pawn. And when I play rook d8, I'm basically just trying to x-ray this king, and I have some ideas of playing bishop f4, and just trying to set my bishops up on these two diagonals and get it as difficult as possible for this king to get out. Because as long as this king stays on d1, then this rook can't move. So now in this position, there's really only one idea that white has to consolidate, to like properly consolidate. And in the game he played knight d4, which is a perfectly reasonable move. Like, I think this was what I completely expected. If I had white in this position, I would probably play knight d4 myself, because I mean, what looks more natural than to put a knight in the center, shut down the d file, attack this bishop. I mean, you want to take this bishop and then play king c2. And I mean, it looks like a very reasonable move. Put the other knight on f3, and then just slowly develop. But actually, the best move here is g4. And this is really like trying to solve the main problem of your position, is you cannot play king c2 because of this bishop on f5. And when you play g4, this bishop has no place to go on this diagonal, where it will get traded off or captured. So now, yeah, this would be pretty bad. I would have to probably retreat, and yeah, as soon as this bishop has to retreat, then you can play king c2 already. And you know, once this rook gets into play, then white is going to be completely winning. But he didn't play it. He played knight d4. And now this lets me have a few more chances. So I played bishop f4. This is my plan. Now you can't take on f5. Well, anyway, it would hang the queen, but even if it didn't, it would leave this knight undefended. So you have to kind of keep this knight on d4. So I play queen f3. And now I play king g7. So, you know, it's not really ideal for me to be playing slowly here, but I don't really have anything better to do. And now I just want to kind of centralize my rooks and try to use my remaining pieces. I still have two bishops, I'll have two rooks and a queen, which is more than enough, you know, firepower to make some serious threats. And again here, white has to find what I think is the only move to, at this point, I think, keep an advantage. And he will end up consolidating if he plays it. It's again this move g4. So it's just absolutely essential to chase this bishop away from this diagonal so that the king can escape to c2. In the game he played a very similar idea. He played g3, but now it's actually, now already black can start taking the initiative again, and I don't think white is actually better anymore after this. So, I mean, this is the kind of position, it's really tough to play. Even though white is up material, white objectively does have a way to, you know, consolidate his position. He has to find a few accurate only moves, which, if you don't find those accurate moves, then your position could actually just turn out to be really bad and losing. So that's why, you know, that's why I kept playing on, because this is, you know, it looks like white just up a piece, but no, it's more complicated than that. You have to still play accurately for a few more moves. I mean, once you get rid of this bishop, and then you get the king to c2, and then the rook to e1, then yeah, that'll be pretty hopeless for black, but you know, for now that hasn't happened. So now here you have to find a really important idea for black. It's really only one idea that's good for black. Because if we just retreat this bishop or something, then, you know, again, like, it gives white time to play g4, which we don't want to allow. So, yeah, I mean, this I had seen before. Like, I was actually hoping for this move g3 because I saw what black's idea was here. But if you want to try and find it, then I'll let you pause the video. What move should black play here? And then what's the follow-up to that move? So you have to find the move and then the follow-up. So hopefully you were looking for the forcing moves. The first move to look at is bishop takes t2. And this is actually a really bizarre position. The natural recapture king takes c2 is actually a mistake. This allows black's main idea. The computer finds this very clever defense, knight takes f5, check. And then after g takes f5, the king can escape to c2, and black has won his piece back, and the position is, you know, still a little bit unclear. Like, this king has been a little bit weakened after this capture on f5, but at least I'm not down a piece yet, so I would have been happy to see that. But okay, this natural move king takes d2 is important, because now I think, yeah, also black has only one good idea in this position. Otherwise, white is just going to consolidate, get this rook out, the king is going to run away, and he's going to be fine. So if you saw the follow-up here on the next move, then yeah, very good job. So that move is queen b6. And this has a really nasty double threat. So I'm not only threatening queen takes b2 check, which wins the rook, but even if you save this rook, first of all, I could still take on b2, but also this move is totally crucial. It takes d4 check. It wins my piece back, and if you take, I can play queen takes d4 check and take on g1. And actually, in this case, I'm not actually sure that this is the best play for black to play, because white has rook e7 check in the end. So maybe here it's actually better for black to take on c3, or to take on b2, because now white's whole house is going to be pretty much falling apart. I mean, this actually runs into checkmate in one. Queen c2 is checkmate, because the knight is pinned. So that means you'd have to run up here, and then I start taking all of your pieces, pretty much. So you can't let me take b2. So king c1 is the only move. And now still, black has to continue to play forcefully, because now, white is going to, get this bishop out, get this rook out, eventually get rid of this bishop on f5, and then get the king up, and get this rook out of a1. So, okay, this next move I also had to see in advance. This rook takes d4. So I'm sacrificing a whole rook, and queen takes d4, so gaining a tempo, attacking this. So there's rook g2. And now it's very easy to go wrong here with black. You still have to find one more good move. If you just play bishop to e4, well, this would be a pretty big mistake, I think because of queen c3. And now, yes, you can win some material back by trading queens and taking on g2, but white will still be up a piece. And even though you have a couple pawns for it, this is a completely winning endgame for white. So, black is down a rook here, so we have to go for a little more than just winning back the exchange. And if you've studied any of Paul Morphy's games, this would be I would call this a Paul Morphy move. We get our last piece into play, rook to d8. And this is quite an incredible position. So I don't remember the last time I've actually seen a position like this in any of my own games. White is up an entire rook, and it's white's turn. And black doesn't even have like a direct threat. Like, I'm not threatening checkmate. These squares are all covered. I mean, it looks like this pawn is hanging with check. Yeah, it's not really clear what black is actually threatening, but white has literally no moves. Like, if you just look at all of white's pieces, none of them can move. This queen absolutely has to stay defending the d1 square. She also has to stay defending the e3 square. So like, if she goes and takes on b7, now after rook d7, she's going to have to return back to f3. And then black is going to actually execute. Black actually does have a threat here, which I'll show you later. But I mean, just to illustrate, there's like literally no. I mean, if you can't move this rook, like if you go here, then you block the queen, checkmate. If you go here, then I just take it. If you go here, I can also just take it at the very least, and then I'll actually end up being up the exchange after these. Take your rook. I mean, yeah, you can play rook h2, and then black will actually execute his real threat. I mean, you literally can't do anything. Like, you could try a4 to try and get this rook active, but now black executes his real plan. So, yeah, this is a really instructive way for black to finish the game off. He has to do this now, because otherwise, if white gets time to get this rook active, then our moment could easily evaporate here. So, what is the move for black? There's also there has to be a follow-up to it. And the first move is bishop e4. So, okay, looks like we're skewering the queen and rook. Not badly. There we go. But actually, our idea is not to take the rook. Our idea is to distract the queen away from the c3 square. So the queen must stay guarding d1 and e3. If you go to g4, then queen e3 is going to lead to immediate checkmate. So it has to play queen e2. And now black just plays c3. And there's literally no way for white to stop like any of black's threats here. I mean, this is again, completely incredible. I mean, he's up a whole rook. It looks like he has like enough pieces around his king defending, but not really. I'm threatening to take on b2. If the queen takes, queen d1 is going to be checkmate. And there's just no defense. Like if you play rook b1, I can actually even play c2. And then I'm threatening this, I'm threatening this. So yeah, bottom line here, actually, there's no good move here for white. My opponent thought for about half an hour here, and he didn't find anything better than bishop d3, which just kind of delays the inevitable, so of course I can just take that. And yeah, now black is not even down any material. The game was over pretty quickly, because this king is still weak. So I finished queen f4, played bishop e4. Of course, we do not want to trade queens. And now rook d2. If black had to trade queens here, this would actually be a huge win for white, because now white's probably playing for a win in this endgame, even though I have 2 pawns for the exchange. Because they're split, I don't have any passed pawns. This is pretty good winning chances for white. But okay. Instead, of course, we play queen g1 check, and this leads to checkmate after d1. So yeah, this was definitely a very dramatic game. A lot of stuff going on. So this opening the Ponziani is not very common, so it's not very often that I have gotten to play this crazy line with this piece sacrifice. And I haven't looked at this in several years. Yeah, probably not since more than 5 years ago, I would say. So I don't really remember all the details. But yeah, I just think the main line of this sacrifice is such a bizarre position where black sacrifices 2 pieces just to achieve this position. The queen of 6. And yeah, I mean, there's some positions in chess there's different types of positions. So there's, on the calm side, there's strategic positions where kind of finding important maneuvers is the main, theme of the position. And then there's tactical positions, which are sharper, usually a lot of, captures and sacrifices. And then kind of the next step up from that is what we call irrational or chaotic positions, which are kind of beyond the scope of human calculation, and a lot of times they're also beyond the scope of machine calculation. And yeah, like I at one point spent a lot of time looking at this position with computers, and you can look at this position for days, even with very powerful engines, and still not have any idea what the heck is going on. So yeah, I never found out who this mysterious person was on chess.com, posting on the blog about this supposed refutation to the Ponziani. And I mean, he had games on there that he was supposedly playing against Stockfish, and he was like playing black from this position. And from what's the position? Yeah, bishop f2 here. Yeah, we're cheering here. Like supposedly he was playing black in this position and winning against Stockfish, like the strongest chess engine at that time. And yeah, I mean it's a pretty crazy line. This is like just pure long-term compensation for black. And I think between 2 humans, this is kind of probably anybody's game, because black also has to be accurate. Like if white is able to consolidate and finish development, then black is just down 2 pieces and going to be completely lost. But I mean, if black gets these pawns rolling, and this king doesn't find a safe, home in the center, then white can just get rolled off the board. So I mean, the computer says this is completely equal, which of course is ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know what the evaluation is here. So yeah, anyway, that was one of the crazier games that I played. I'm usually a more positional player, but every so often I kind of lose my mind and decide to sacrifice material and play crazy openings. So yeah, I will make some videos later in the week where I'll analyze the games that I played from last weekend. But until then, I'll have to stop here, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.